So I think it's important, particularly if it's a consistent schedule, I think it's important to salve the wounds and suture them where needed, and if need be, look at where those wounds come from. But as far as the work's concerned, you go in and you get that done. And
Bruce, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you on here today.
Yeah, thanks very much. No, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
You and I met a couple of years ago now. You were in a doctor-patient capacity. So you were my patient at the clinic when I still was running it in Toronto. And you were one of those people that, I mean, doctors are not supposed to have favorites. We're not supposed to have favorite patients, but you were definitely one of them. And one of the things that really stood out to me right from the beginning is, how young you were coming to Toronto filming for your show American Gods, which we're going to talk about today. But you were coming in, you're like a 20-something-year-old. You're like, you know what? I need chiropractic to keep me fit and healthy while I'm shooting. And I loved it because I was like, who does that? Like, who is so proactively thinking about their health and making sure that you had come in, you're like, these are all my x-rays. This is my problem with my lumbar spine. My doctor in the UK is, telling me this and that. And so I was just really impressed with you from the start. And then when we kind of got into the rhythm of care and started to get to know you, my staff and myself starting to get to know you. Of course, we all fell in love with you, but it was really about the, you ask really big questions, so for your age, your wisdom really precedes your age. So I wanted you on the podcast because I wanted to really just have a conversation and show, introduce you to my listeners and, what an incredible guy you are.
Oh, it's really kind. No, thanks very much. Well, happy to be here and have a chat and help where I can. Yeah, no worries.
So let's start with your origin story. So as I mentioned, and we will have also mentioned this in the introduction, you play Technical Boy on American Gods. But let's start at the start. When do you remember first acting, first falling in love with the process, and thinking to yourself, like, this is something that I really want to pursue?
I think there's a few answers to this. I think the obvious one is I got the lead in the school play when I was 5, which is adorable. It was a play about befriending dinosaurs with chocolate. So it's Thai art, just the precursor to Shakespeare. It was real good stuff.
Yeah.
So possibly the main song was called Choc Rock, and I had a speech impediment at the time. I couldn't pronounce my R's, so it was Choc Rock.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It was cute. So I think that might have helped me get cast. Honestly, I think it probably came out of family dynamics. I think we probably find our ways when we're young where we can feel as if we're fulfilling some kind of role. And I had, I still do have an older sister and a younger sister. But my older sister was bigger, stronger, smarter, all the rest of those things. So I think I probably found a way to fulfill a kind of family role where I felt like I was still achieving something. I think my family... loving family, love them very much. I had a chat with them earlier today, actually. But it's I think getting stuff done and doing it right was implicitly, if not explicitly, praised. So I think I picked up on that from a young age. And also, my earliest memory is sitting on my granddad's knee, being told war stories. My granddad John on my mum's side. So I think that might have woven its way into my psyche from a young age as well. Stories, and I mean, I was the kid who was flying X-wings and slaying dragons way past when it was socially acceptable to do so, and I just haven't really stopped. But I've always been interested in telling stories and wondering and seeing where that can go. I was into sports a little, but I always found stories to be way more interesting. They're way more stimulating. So I suppose it probably comes from that.
Yeah, and it's a way more powerful message to get, if you're trying to get a message across, storytelling is the way to do it. You can do it in sort of subtle and nuanced ways as well, yeah?
Yeah, well, I'd say so. I mean, you could argue that sports in the form of, storytelling of legalized war, there's a lot that you could go into and all of that, but stories are so versatile. I think they're the big old reason why our species is where it is. And yeah, I think they're beautiful. We need them.
And a lot of your training is in the theater. A lot of your acting background is theatrical, and now you're on a TV show now. Can you sort of walk us through some of let's talk about the elements that are similar, that overlap between the theater and, shooting a television show,
Mhm.
and then contrast that? Like, what are the stark differences between the two?
I would say in terms of similarities, in terms of your preparation, you need to know your character. You need to go in and do all that, all the emotional prep, all the backstory. I'm not saying anything revolutionary here. All the drama schooly stuff, all that good prep work, that all stays the same at a foundational level. In a practical sense, depending on the structure of the play, you tend to go on much more of an organic journey in theatre, in that you tend to go in a narrative line, whereas with TV, you shoot non-sequentially, non-chronologically. So you will be jumping around, and it can be a situation of, well, so that's a big difference, actually. There's a lot more waiting in TV. You come in, you get processed, you might be sitting around for a few hours, and then on 10 minutes notice, you have a shot set up and you've got to go in a position where your character may have been thinking that they were just about to die. So you've got maybe inside of 2 minutes to go from 0 to ready to crack in front of a camera. So that's one thing. It's close to a dead start to sprinting, I suppose, if you want to use that analogy. Those are some differences. The scale actually is probably the main difference. The amount of people, at least for this experience for me on American Gods, the amount of people working on this show is staggering. It's amazing. Everyone's working together. Everyone's doing an amazing job. But it's hundreds of people. It's hundreds of hours. I thought about this the other day, actually. I saw one of the frames on screen. It looked beautiful. It looked wonderful. And I thought, when an audience sees that, they'll go, that looked great. And it will. But there's so many hours of work that went on in terms of people building the set,
Right.
the costume, the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So many hours of work that went into the background to make that tiny little thing where people go, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it is cool. It's about 400 hours of work. So yes, it is. But so scale, jumping into things relatively quicker. In essence, it's good work. It's authentic, good, honest art at its core, which I think is the main thing that keeps me interested. At least it's good work, and different styles of writing for sure. But yeah, good writing.
And I want, you mentioned something about, the preparation is the same, and I definitely want to talk about that. And maybe we can talk about that in terms of your audition for American Gods. And, while the listener may not necessarily, have a Hollywood career as you do, we want to be able to show up and nail it when the time, when the time calls for such heroic efforts. So when you were first auditioning for the role, did you walk out of it and say, okay, like, we're done here, nailed it, this is, they're just going to wrap it up? Or did you walk out and you're like, what just happened? I can't remember. Like, for me, whenever I'm in a flow state, I can never remember what happened. So after a really great conversation with someone, I'll be like, damn it, what did I say when we were talking about that? I can't remember. So maybe just walk us through what your experience was like in terms of auditioning for American Gods, but also your prep in the anticipation of the audition as well.
Sure. Flow, I think that's a really good analogy to jump off of later as well. I feel very, very similar when we're doing a scene in a really good way. For the audition, I actually did it all, well, to begin with, at least via self-tape. So not too dissimilar to what we're doing now, except I'll have a friend there, we'll read the scene. I did that when I was still in London, in Turnpike Lane, shout out North London, with my uni chums. I did a few tapes and sent that off, and I actually didn't hear anything back for about 2 months after I sent off the tape. I had a bunch of tapes come through for pilot season. This was one of them. I sent it off. I thought it was good work. I did my prep. I went in. I loved the character. But then one of the really important things, at least for me, is immediately after you do an audition, you learn what you can from it. You see where it worked, and then you deliberately and actively forget that it existed, so that you can move on with your life and move on to the next thing. Because otherwise, once you've learned from it, if you're always waiting for that call and you're waiting for that result, you'll go insane. You tear your own hair out.
Right.
So
yeah.
I didn't hear anything for about 2 months, and then I got a call from my manager, my agent, saying they'd like you to try it like this. That started about 2 months of consistent taping, where I was doing maybe 4 or 5 tapes a week of the same thing and sending this over to the casting director.
The same lines, the same script?
Similar. They added some new ones eventually, because they'd seen the scene so many times in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually that culminated in them flying me out to test, which I didn't know what that meant at the time. But that basically means that they're seriously considering offering you the role. You're down to the last few. You come out and you sign the contract beforehand. That's all been negotiated. And then they see you in person. So I flew out to LA to test, which was amazing. That was already a win for me as far as I'm concerned. It was great. And then, actually, this is an important point maybe. It was the casting director, when they first saw my tape, they said that they knew that I was right for the role when they first saw it. But they had a bunch of other people interested in the role. So this is Orly Sitowitz and Margie Simpkin, the casting directors. But Orly saved my my tape onto her desktop under Gaptooth Boy. And I don't know if I told you this.
No, I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, it was literally, so there's a little Gaptooth Boy sat there, and they had people come in, and maybe they were good, maybe they weren't, maybe they were interested, maybe they were busy, and they fell out for whatever reason over the course of the thing. And eventually she kept on saying, "What about Gaptooth Boy?" enough times that eventually they saw me. But anyway, long and short of it is, I went in, I tested, loved the gang, it was some good work. And then a week later, I was doing kids' parties at the time, so I had a suitcase full of lightsabers, suitcase full of a Shaggy Doo costume and all the rest of it. Got the call saying, like, "You got the role." And it was, then it was, you're moving to Toronto for half a year and 9 days, sort out your proverbial shit.
Right.
But in terms of the prep for it, when I went into test, so it's a room full of producers and the casting directors, like the people who make the decisions. I wasn't nervous. I went because I'd been with that character for 4 months, and I had done so much. And it was in me. It was completely natural. They could have asked me to do it any which way, standing on my head backwards. On a very emotional level and a very, very deep level, I understood that character to the point where they could have asked me to do anything. I wasn't nervous because I'd bled through the eyes of the character for 4 months. I was so ready for it. I wasn't nervous. It was playtime. It was fun, actually. I was really looking forward to it. The whole thing was entertaining. And in terms of prep going into shoot, for example, in terms of being ready for some scenes that are slightly more emotional and you need to be able to jump into some pretty dark places pretty quickly, you do your emotional prep, you go in and you have it all cooking and ready. And it's been getting easier to do, and I need less and less warm-up time, but it's essentially getting yourself in a position where in the 15 seconds where they set up the shot and they're saying sound speed, all the rest of that stuff, you can jump into your previous circumstances. I mean, I'm rambling slightly. In terms of an actionable term, it's the old Arnold mantra of reps, reps, reps. I've been in classes since uni, and I haven't really stopped, pretty much weekly. I'm always reading plays, I'm always reading things, and actively putting up scenes where they can be critiqued and worked and see what's not working. Mm-hmm. So just training, just as much training as I can get my grubby little mitts on, really. In theatre's really good training. You get instant feedback from the audience. That's another beautiful part of it. It's, if things work, if things don't, if it's real. If it's real, you can feel it yourself, but the audience will let you know as well. Just go in being more ready than anyone else can be is kind of my mantra. I'd go in there and they could ask me to do anything. That's the kind of prep that I do. I'd make sure that nothing could, they could throw anything at me, and that's kind of the mantra I go in there with.
And do you find that after you've been shooting, after you've been technical boy, is there a time where you need to transition back to being Bruce? I know that there's been, we hear of actors that just stay in character the entire time, whether they're shooting or not. And the character in many ways integrates into the personality of the actor. Is that something that's been true for you? Or do you find that, as you were saying with the warm-up, you need less and less time with the warm-up? Is it the same on the other side of that, where you're finished the shoot, you're finished being technical boy, and now you can just go back to being yourself? Or is there a bit of a in between?
I'd say there is an in between, and in that in between there can be a huge chasm of different variant possibilities. In that, it's immediately after, depending on the level of the scene, all the rest of it. But it's not the most fun headspace to be in. Is the character? I think it's entirely appropriate to be in that exact headspace. That's where the character is as myself and all the rest of that stuff.
Yes.
But it's not fun. It's basically personified avatar of modern day loneliness, anxiety, twitch reactions, fight or flight response consistently, being consistently betrayed by things that you've created. It's a hell of an interesting character. It's a gold plate of a gift. It's beautiful and I love it. But yeah, it's tricky sometimes for me to get out of it. What I usually do is just come back. Usually I like to keep to myself and just do something that is completely unrelated and just usually watch a nice story, just people being normal, or hang out with some of the cast. But yes, I think a good performance should cost you something. I think that's, and you can get it back, but it hurts. It hurts, and it leaves a bit of a mark afterwards. So I think it's important, particularly if it's a consistent schedule. I think it's important to salve the wounds and suture them where needed, and if need be, look at where those wounds come from. But as far as the work's concerned, you go in and you get that done, and I want a scene to use me up. I want it to be everything and all of me as the character. I think that's the only real way to do it. I think that's what good art should be. I think it should be everything.
It's wonderfully said. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And do you find that your personalities, like Bruce, is your personality totally separate from Technical Boy, or do you find that there is overlap between you two?
It's definite overlap. I mean, depending on the old school of acting that you train at, but I mean, a lot of the character is built from parts of myself and all the rest of that stuff. It might start off in a slightly abstract context when thinking about playing a deity and all the rest of that stuff, but ultimately the main thing that people are going to connect to is the human emotion. And in terms of hard line to human emotion, there's little shortcuts you can do. There's like emotional recall techniques like Hagen stuff. But when, as you mentioned earlier, when it's flow, everything else kind of melts away, and it's practical when talking about it to save the character, but I never think of it as the character because that's separate. When you're playing with it, it's beyond osmosis. It's the same thing. So it all kind of bleeds away, and then it's just kind of like a strangely macabre and divine dance that you do with the material and the other people you're playing with, and then on the other side of it, you see what happens. But then with TV, you're aware of the structure. You get more comfortable playing, knowing where things are. It's I kind of think of it more like a dance with your demons and your angels having a conversation with each other at the same time through the character.
That's amazing. And with one of the things that I have noticed, and it's probably not the same degree, it's definitely not the same degree with me as it is with you, as your platform grows and as your visibility grows, you talked about the amount of preparation that you do for the character, and you just need a couple minutes, and then you can kind of go to some of those places that the team needs from you in order to perform and to be Technical Boy.
Mm-hmm.
But as your platform grows, I would imagine that there's also going to be people who love you, and you're going to have, the fans and the adoration and the accolades that come with your work, but you're also going to have criticism.
Sure.
So my question, that long preamble, is, how do you deal with some of the criticism of your work? And, in your line of work, of course, people tend to also not only criticize your work, but criticize you. So are there frameworks that you have developed, or is there a way that you relate to criticism?
I've been relatively fortunate in terms of I haven't had to deal with too much of that. Some flavors of it, but nowhere near as bad as other people have, for sure. Relationship to criticism. I mean, to be honest, I'll honestly welcome it if it's valid. If there's if it highlights a hole in my game, of somewhere I can improve and get better, then yes, please tell me. I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But then equally speaking, if it's just a consistent bombardment from the whole online world, picking you apart in every possible fiber, that can get to you. Part of it, which I've been realizing recently, a large part of being able to do this for me is being able to actively mentally detach from the rest of the world when you're doing your work, which is sort of a slightly more floral way of saying that when I'm doing the work, nothing else exists. Whereas again, flow, good old Haley, check me high. That was him, wasn't it? The book.
So you're not on social, you're not on Instagram, you're
Well,
not
I
checking your
am.
tweets. You are.
Oh, well, not necessarily. I haven't been on there that much recently. When I'm working, I tend to step a bit away from it, um, because the work is kind of the only thing that really exists for me at that point.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I do, and every now and then, it's for the most part, it's been really positive. It's mostly people saying that they really enjoyed it. I mean, every now and then I'll have someone come up to me and say, "Hey, you play that? You're an arsehole." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, thanks, man.
It's me.
Yeah, cheers, bro." But I've been quite fortunate in that regard. I think it's going to be a real test going forward. It's going to be seeing how I respond to that kind of stuff. It's Look, opinions are all well and good, and everyone's got one. But I think I've been relatively good at distancing myself from the noise and madness of crowds and the kind of cacophony that can come from a mob mentality, generally around a
Yes.
bandwagon or a show or all the rest of that stuff. If I need to take a step back and look, ultimately, I know I've done the work. I know I've done the work and the prep to go into it, and if it's good work, then you can take all the shots you want, really. And I don't really necessarily see it gets slightly more blurred if people start to take personal shots at, say, my personal life or something like that. But I've been quite fortunate that's not really been happening to me
Hmm.
yet. Um,
Yes,
Watch
we're
this space,
knocking on
I
our
suppose.
heads. Yes, knocking on wood. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But so far, the fan base and just yeah, I've not really had anyone been actively really aggressive in a negative sense towards me around
Right.
this, which I'm very, really grateful for.
And have you had to deal with people who feel or put up boundaries for people who, feel entitled to, all the permutations and details of your privacy? One of the things that, we see in, the celebrity culture is, you make a mistake and you're canceled. There's this cancel culture. So I love what you're saying about, if you have a valid criticism for me, please give it to me and I will use that and integrate that to grow, because actually that's actually how that is the right way to do it. um, but the other flip side of that is that people will feel like, well, he's in the spotlight, he's chosen this, so anything is sort of fair game. How do you deal with have you had to deal with that? Have you had experience with people who've just felt entitled to your privacy and having to put up walls or boundaries around what is acceptable and what is not?
Um, Sort of here and there. I mean, I also fully acknowledge that sort of that goes hand in hand with this game is that, and that you are in the public eye and the public sphere in a certain sense. But I mean, honestly, hand on heart, I don't think I'm at the kind of publicity and notoriety level where that becomes an active problem for me yet. I think that's probably a little further down the line.
Hmm.
There've been some situations where maybe people are slightly more familiar, but at the same time, I don't begrudge that in any way, shape, or form. It's usually in a very, very friendly environment, in a friendly situation. So far, I've been, as I said, really, really lucky. Everyone's been the people who enjoy the show tend to really enjoy the show and they're enthusiastic about it. So that's been lovely. I don't know. My mum, I went back for Christmas. My mum showed me, was it my sister? We were all together. Anyway, they showed me a thing. It was I think I did one tweet a while ago where I posted a picture of my family, and it was like upcoming people in the world of TV or whatever, and it was talking about how I love to take holidays with my family and
Hmm.
and it had this long article about what I liked. This, like, you have no idea who I am. Who wrote this?
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple of those floating around, but I mean, if people want to read them, that's fine. But ultimately, I'll pop out in terms of social what I feel that I want to in terms of my personal life. I would My real concern is for the work, so I hope that the work is what people are most concerned with. It's what I'm most
Yes.
concerned with, and I hope
Hmm.
that that speaks the loudest. And then, if anything else needs to adapt from there, I will. I suppose this is more of a watch this space kind of scenario. We'll see.
You were at the house, not too long ago now, a couple months,
Yeah,
a couple months
month
ago, maybe a month
maybe
ago,
a
something
little
like
bit.
that.
Yes.
And this is how, you and I have kept in touch in many ways. So, you were a patient at the clinic, and then, I was inviting you to some of the events that Giovanni and I run, and we do these things called superhero coffees,
Yes.
where we we bring sort of people that we think are going to really get along together, and we sit in our kitchen, it's around a circular table, and we just talk. And when the time that you were over, there were, there were other influencers, people on Instagram, artists, etc. And one of the through lines, and I think that this relates back to your character, to Technical Boy, is this through line of loneliness. Now, we won't name who was there. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
There were, Giovanni and I were, after everyone had left, he made it was a funny remark, and I'm paraphrasing. He said something like, there was like millions of followers at the table, like the amount of, influence and people that were at the table. But the through line and the conversation that we were having was this idea of loneliness,
Sure.
and this idea that, once you reached a certain level of success, that you had less and less peers who understood what was going on. There was this pressure to sort of show up as, there was some pressure to sort of play a role. And you had touched on it, and I want to sort of let you steer the boat here a little bit, in terms of talking about, and again, this can come back to my question before around, the similarities between your character and you, but is this something that you can, or that you did relate to when we were at the home? And is this something you can relate to now around this idea of, having people that know and see and understand you?
Yeah. In a word, yes. I don't know if I'd phrase it exactly like that, but for the loneliness flavor of it, yeah, definitely, for sure. In my experience, at least, I'm not going to claim to be able to speak for anyone or anyone else in this position, but for me, it is. I mean, I've actively been moving countries to shoot this. That's a thing, but it's easy to become isolated, especially if your priorities are stacked the way mine are, in terms of the work being the top priority. Other things tend to fall by the wayside, and that's actually something that I think I'm going to need to adapt going forward, just in terms of mental longevity and just, being a human.
Who's wired for connection? I mean,
Yeah.
your home is in Britain, like your family, your friends, where you grew up, is in the UK, yes?
Yes, it is. I lived in LA for a bit in between the other seasons, and I've got some good chums there as well. Yeah, I mean, look, it's easy to get super duper lonely doing this thing. It's very, very easy to do that. And I suppose, yeah, I mean, the better it goes, the busier you are, but you have these. So let's say you have a full working week, and you get picked up at, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the morning on a Monday. You head in, you get processed, you see the people in like the hair and makeup trailer, you'll see the ADs around the trailers and all the rest of that stuff. Maybe you'll wait for a bit, you'll go in, you're in character headspace most of the day. You shoot your thing, maybe it's a 14-hour day, 16-hour day, whatever it may be. If you're shooting a few times that week and you've got other things to prep for during, that's your whole week, and it drains you a sense in that. I'm not being particularly eloquent about this. I'm hold on, I can do better. Thanks for this topic.
I think you're doing great, for the record.
Okay, well, that's very kind. No, look, I'm being unnecessarily verbose. The real truth of the matter is that whilst doing this has been probably the loneliest that I've felt in my life. Which I think is an important thing to admit, because I think a lot of other people are probably in similar positions who are in similar positions. But I remember I had a conversation with you when I came into the clinic in season 2. I had a fever. I was a little ill at the time anyway, but I came in and, I broke down after one of our sessions, and I remember saying, I have everything that I want. Things are going like so well for me, but I've never felt more alone.
I remember that.
Yeah, me too. It's just, look, it's all well and good achieving goals and all the rest of that stuff, and I love what I do. I'm not intending on changing that in any way, shape or form, but I've realized since then that if the work is the only thing that I have, that I'll be very, very unhappy. There has to be more than just that. There has to be some connection, rather than just being a trailblazer sprinting off into the distance by yourself. You know, the downside of blazing a trail is you're at the front on your own, which is a somewhat indulgent metaphor. But yeah, I after season 2 was probably actually, I spent a good couple of months after that just very, very, very unhappy. That was probably actually the most unhappy I have been in my life. It was a couple of months after we finished season 2. It was an intense season, and that had its own challenges for its own reasons. But I was very, very, very unhappy. I couldn't ever remember feeling that I was lacking any more happiness or any more connection than in that moment. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, I still do. I've got some great friends in England. I've got some great friends here. I've got some great friends in LA. But maybe it was part of spending so much time in the character's headspace. But I think honestly, more of what it was just exploring more of those parts within myself and actively in some ways isolating myself. But there is a darker side to this coin that I think is important to acknowledge. It is a bit of a double-edged sword every now and then, and it's something that I'm navigating, and I don't think it's unique what I'm going through in any way, shape or form in terms of the reassessing of priorities. I think it's a very natural transition that I'm probably that's probably occurring with me at the minute. I think it's really important to acknowledge that no matter how glitzy and glammy and how wonderful things may appear, for example, on social or all the rest of that stuff, or indeed in personal conversations, I'm a pretty chipper chap, and that's not disingenuous. I'm genuinely a happy dude. But just behind the veil and the curtain, it can get pretty dark pretty fast. It's Betty Gilpin, who was on the show. She played Audrey in season 1. She's great. She's brilliant. She's on Glow now, one of the main roles on Glow. She gave an interview and she talked about going into the dark depths, swimming around in the dark depths of the lake rather than tap dancing around on its surface, pretending everything's okay in terms of depression. Yeah. And I mean, you have to go there if you're going to do, I think at least, if you're going to do good work as an artist, as an actor, you have to swim around in those dark, murky depths. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that probably, again, I don't think I'm unique in this. I think most people probably have their own wells and all the rest of this stuff mulling around, just this screaming void of nothingness that lives just behind your eyes, where you don't, is this all there is? Is this what life is? Mm-hmm. In those moments of quiet, it's for me, and this is again something that I've been realizing, constant activity and productivity, I'm realizing, are definitely a way for me to not feel that. And the moments where I stop working, it's just the void screams, and it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to do. It's awful. And it would be easy to get indulgent in that, but I think that's a lot of people. I think a lot of people are there. And you can harness that and you can use that in its own way. It can be a great sort of motivation, but at the same time, I think it's ultimately something that people need to deal with. I think it can manifest in not necessarily healthy ways. But no, it's scary. Life's scary and it hurts, and you need to work your ways around it. I don't know. We're all working it out. I mean, I talked slightly about this when on that coffee morning. Mm-hmm. And some of the advice I got from the other people at the table who are slightly more advanced in terms of life experience than me were saying, you might not feel like you know what's going on, but hey, spoiler alert, no one does. Right. So right. I don't know. One of the things that I'm trying to work out at the minute is, does this change? Is this something that I can actively change about myself, or is this just what life is for most people and people cope with it in different ways? Maybe that's more of a philosophical question, but I would argue it's slightly more of a practical one. I don't know.
And it's tricky because you're doing, on the one hand, you're doing something that you love.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you know, the playing in the major leagues or the big leagues, or, you know, following the dream that you want to be following has the expense of, you know, being completely consumed and not having a lot of social contact and not doing some of the things that you were talking about that are positive, that add to your mental health. And I just want to thank you for your candor and your openness, your honesty, and your transparency for talking about the challenge that you're having now in the present tense? I know you talked about season 2, but you're saying, I'm trying to work this out right now. I bring that up specifically because I was having a conversation with Dr. Joanne Cacciatore. She was a guest on the podcast.
Mhm.
Her specialty is more about traumatic loss and the dealing with grief and unexpected loss and death. But we got into this conversation around this happiness cult that we have,
Yeah.
where I say, how are you? And you say, I am great. How are you?
Yeah.
Even though you may have just been in the depths of despair, in the depths of the swamp, in the depths of the lake, as you were so eloquently describing before. And we often talk about sadness. We often talk about grief or something that was painful in the past tense. We will talk, I was sad. I was desperate, but then I had, X discovery, and now I'm fine. And now I put on the poker face, or I put on the mask, and I don't let anybody in. And I think that to anybody that's listening, you don't have to be a Hollywood actor for this to be, or to be on a major show, on a major hit show, to be able to relate to this. I think we all ebb and flow out through happiness and sadness and anger and rage and loneliness and despair and all those sort of darker emotions that you play with in your character. But we are so, you said something like the noise is deafening, or you had said something like that a few moments ago. And I
Yeah.
think what a lot of us do is we ignore it. We get busy with something, we turn on the radio, or we, go do a workout, or we, we do something to distract ourselves from the way that we feel. And we're never able to really sit in the shadow, sit in the darkness. And I just want to commend you, first of all, for, just saying that and being as open and honest as you're being. But I think it's also really valuable for the people that are listening, because it's part of the human experience. And we try so hard to run from it
Yeah.
that it ends up being way more destructive, way more, just destructive than it does if you don't allow yourself to move through it. If you're always trying to avoid it by, playing hot potato with something else, you never have the opportunity to really examine it, where it's coming from. What are some strategies, frameworks, and tactics that will help you move through it? How do you build? And we talk a lot about community on the podcast. I mean, that's, it must be. I mean, I know you're in Toronto now. I'm in Toronto, but it must be hard. You're away. I know you have great friends all over the place, but yeah, it's hard.
It is tricky. Yeah, it has its moments. It's I'm recognizing at the minute, and have been recognizing somewhat protractedly over the past year or so, that whatever this lacking, this hole, this void, whatever it is, ultimately I think it has come from me, or probably more realistically is me. So there's going to need to be some introspection and some work done to go into that.
Yes.
So that's definitely something that I'm grappling with, and all the rest of that stuff. But at the same time, I think there are definitely practical steps that you can do to make sure that you don't turn into an arsehole while that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that you don't hurt other people along the way. I think it's really easy when you're in pain to bring other people into the same situation you're in, the old misery loves company adage. But I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's important to take care of people. I think the biggest dicks are usually, their souls are screaming the loudest, I would
They're the
probably
most
argue.
hurt. Yeah, they're the
Yeah.
most hurt. Yeah. So what do you do? So on a typical shoot day, you said, you sit around for like 10 hours, 14 hours, and then within a matter of 10 minutes, you have to get into this character. Walk me through what you do what do you do for self-care? You had mentioned something briefly around, I read something or I watch a story, but how do you, you're kind of waiting around for hours on end. You're
Mhm.
probably reading your script, but walk me through what a typical day would look like in terms of how you would um, prepare for your shoot, but then also how you're integrating self-care, or maybe, I don't know if that's important to you. It sounds like it is. I mean, you were a chiropractic patient when you were 20, just trying to make sure that your spine is,
Sure.
moving well. So tell
Yeah.
me about self-care and what that means. Like, what are some of the things you would do to support yourself while you were shooting?
A big thing is staying physically active. That immediately pops me in a good headspace. So I'll work out pretty hard, usually 5-6 days a week. Usually, depending on the pickup time for the shoot day, I'll prioritize sleep. Sleep's a big one actually, because that can sneak up on you real quick, and you have slightly disproportionate call times, like say one's a night shoot, a couple of days later you're in the morning. That can mess you up slightly. I don't usually look at my script on the day. When I get in, I'll come in, and so it's more of a ritual. We have the sides and the shot list and stuff. Well, not the shot list, sorry, the call list, and I'll highlight my lines and go yep, and then it usually lives in my pocket, and I don't take it out. And I usually, when I get home, then I remember that I have it. And I know to play with it. I know my lines. It's not just knowing my lines; they're in me. It's something else. They're my emotional response. So that's not so much of a thing, but I usually go in and for a shoot day, I'm usually trying to actively, I suppose, keep my powder dry in terms of, I tend to be mostly by myself. Usually in my trailer, if I am watching something, I will deliberately try and make it not particularly educational. I will try and make it something, usually sometimes fantasy based or story based, that is not linked in any way to anything else. And then, because sort of, again, just below the surface, I'm simmering in character mode. When I go in, I'm ready, so that if I am called, I can, trampoline wherever I need to. So that's a thing. That's a major thing. And then when I come back, look, this is super duper nerdy, and it's the first time I've ever said it in any kind of public context. But one of my friends kind of recently got me into watching Critical Role. I don't know if you know what that is. Probably not. No. Well, and here's an education. It's a Dungeons and Dragons streaming podcast.
Okay.
Yep. Which I've never played it. Was never into it in any way, shape, or form. But it's these voice actors. They're all in LA. They're all very well established, very very good voice actors, and they've just been playing this game for years, where they play these fantasy characters. And it's not really so much about the game. It's that these guys are just interesting characters going on an adventure, and that's really nice. It's not really linked to anything that I'm doing towards with work, but it's a nice little detached, and it's just friends dicking around. So little things like that. But you can insert whatever. Like every now and then, I've got a couple of consoles here. Every now and then I'll play a game. It's usually by myself that I like to take myself out of my headspace.
Yeah.
But one of the other cast members, Ashley, who's new this time, Ashley Reyes, she's got a dog. Her dog's called Scout. Scout's very cute. I like to play with the dog. That's nice. You
sort of always have your game face on, though, because you were saying before, like there's this underscore of simmering in your character just to be ready whenever. But yeah.
Sorry, what was that? Game face about? Sorry, I missed the beginning of that.
I said, but there's always sort of an underscore of you having your game face on. There's always you're always sort of simmering in the character, sort of ready. So I understand why you wouldn't be, social and having a laugh and kind of going at things. You're just sort of, keeping it together whenever, for when you're being called up.
Yeah, and that's keep ready for the real emotional stuff in any of the other exchanges. But I think it's also important to highlight that I'm not walking around staring at the floor, not telling people to look at me. I'm not that guy. I'm a human being. I have chats with people. I talk to people, and then I'm just whatever. I'm just hanging out. It's fine. But then when we go in to shoot, and I know it's a couple of minutes to go, then I'll take myself away and go do my work. But yeah, I'm not.
That's not coming through, by the way. It's not coming through that you're telling people not to look at the floor. Yeah. No, just so we're clear that no one thinks that.
Okay, cool. Well, great. Yeah. It's my dad actually. He one of the first things I remember him telling me was manners cost nothing and they're worth so much.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
That's lovely. It's lovely. He worked at Sainsbury's for 36 years, which is like a Loblaws or a Ralph's.
I remember Sainsbury's. Yeah, I would go there. Yeah. I remember Sainsbury's.
Good old Sainsbury's. But yeah, no, he was.
And they had the Express one, which I really liked. The Sainsbury's Express.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of those. They're super convenient. They're doing all right. But yeah, just be nice.
So he was a cashier. I interrupted you. He was a cashier there?
No, he was originally a baker actually. He was a baker, then he was bakery manager, and he was a department manager and did a few bits and bobs. He's now a part-time park ranger at a local park. As in the golf buggy, the fluorescent jacket. You can't drink that there. The whole, he loves it. He's outside all the time. He's having a great time. Yeah. Bless him.
So what do you think, is in your future? Is it, you still want to continue acting for as many minutes, seconds, hours, months, years as time will afford you? Is it, is that the dream career? That's what you want to be doing? Is there anything that you would want to marry with it that you currently don't have that you would like to integrate into your life? What does it look like for you? What the future? If we were to say, let's talk again in 2030, what's the
Okay.
decade look like? And then let's go from there.
Okay, sure. 2030. I would like to be internationally recognized as, oh, this is weird to say out loud and it's going to last forever. I would like to be internationally recognized as the best actor in the world by 2030. Which is a bloody tall order.
I love that.
Yeah, we'll see. So that would be the main, and that's mainly for the ability to work on the kind of material with the, sorry, you still see me? Yeah, great. Sorry, my phone panicked for a second. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's mostly for the access to the kind of writing and the kind of directors and the kind of material and kind of other actors that would be the kind of beautiful works of art that I'd like to be a part of. That's the main thing. Other stuff, I wouldn't mind giving talks to people, I think, but in terms of like in a public context, I think what I'm ultimately leaning towards in terms of a skill set is, and it's off the back of the acting thing, is that I'm been actively cultivating, basically in a very floral actory way of saying it, but like ripping my chest open and showing my heart to people through the context of a character and going, here you go, here's some pain, there you go, isn't that interesting? Everyone feels pretty much the same.
Look what I can do.
Yeah, kind of like, oh, feelings. But I think that translates pretty well to a lot of other things, because it's super duper easy to just, as you like, keep the mask up and all the rest of that stuff. But I mean, the way that people's involvement with technology and social media is going these days, I think for a start, if you're not going to be authentic, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot, because people are going to find out.
And people can smell that. Like you can sniff that a mile.
Sure.
You don't have, when someone's inauthentic.
Yeah, you can taste it. Absolutely. I don't really know. I'd like to be doing more talks and stuff. Ultimately, I'd like to have access to the kind of material and projects where I could, access to the kind of art that you dream about being in. And for a start, I'm kind of in that now. This is an amazing product that I'm in. It's
agreed.
But more of the same and all the rest of that stuff. And beyond that, I would like to take both of my parents to an awards ceremony, and my sisters actually. Usually only get 1 + 1, so I'll have to get a few awards. But that's in 10 years. I'd like to have done that. Yeah, mum, dad, my sisters to an awards ceremony.
I had NHL star Connor Carrick on the podcast, and we did a lightning round. So I just sort of asked him some rapid fire questions. Would you be cool with that if we did that with you?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. I'm ready.
All right. Time you wake up, time your alarm goes off every morning.
Oh, it varies from shoot time. The time 7:05.
7:05. First thing you do when you wake up?
Turn off my alarm and go, and then wake up 15 minutes later.
Favorite song to sing in the shower?
Oh God. I don't really think that. What would it? It's probably something incredibly cringy and probably punky and emo-y from my teenage. Probably a Linkin Park song. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, that's good. That's good. A meal you could eat over and over and over again.
My mum's chicken tikka masala.
Oh, good one. Dream collaboration.
Ooh. Tarantino would be fun. I mean, it feels contrived to say Joaquin Phoenix after all the press he's getting lately, but that would be a hell of an experience as well. Yeah, I mean, hey, there's 1,000,001 people that I could say that are amazing. I mean, Brendan Gleeson would be great. There's so many amazing actors. Tilda Swinton would be fun. There's so many. There's a lot of them.
And
all of them, please.
All of them, please. Yeah. All of them. If you weren't an actor, what would you be?
Yeah, probably bleeding through my eyes to become an actor. That's probably that. If
you could switch lives with one person living, for a day.
Oh, just a day. Okay, cool.
One day, who would it be?
My answer was going to be I wouldn't, but if it's only for a day, There's so much potential here. I'm thinking too much. Ask me again and I'll pretend like I just said it. Go.
If you could switch lives with one person who's
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
for one day, who would it be?
The Rock.
The Rock. Love it. Fact about yourself that may surprise people.
I can click my tongue incredibly fast in a weird way. Ready?
Yes. That's incredible.
There you go.
I love that.
Useless skill.
Inspirations that are not people.
The feeling that you sometimes get when you watch a piece of art or you experience something or you're with your friends where in that tiny little blip of a moment, in some infinitesimal strange ether sense, you understand that you are not alone and someone feels the same way you do.
That's beautiful. Describe your perfect day.
Oh God. I mean, I could talk about work and all the rest of that stuff and going to awards and stuff, but in the interest of full transparency, what's been running around my head lately, my perfect day in terms of recent memory, I'd probably be spending it with someone who I loved. It'd probably be a lazy day involving waking up whenever, going to go get brunch, just spending the day together, maybe going for a walk, all the rest of that mushy stuff and just acting like weirdos together. That would probably, that just being a human being.
A show you recently binged on Amazon Prime that was not yours.
Ooh. Amazon Prime specifically. Okay. Sure.
I can broaden it. We can do Netflix. We can do
The whole
Disney
shebang.
Channel. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, if we're doing the whole thing, the last thing I actually binged, I don't generally binge things unless they absolutely hook me. Succession, which I think is some of the best work I've seen in years. Season 2 of Succession.
I
It's
have not
brilliant.
watched it, but I'm writing it down right now so I don't forget.
It blew my little acting socks off. I loved it. I thought it was great. God, there's such incorrigible assholes on that show, but they're all so human. It's wonderful. It's really good writing. It's very well executed. I think it's brilliant. It's theatre. It's theatre in a TV show.
Amazing. And if people want to, I know we were talking in the pre-chat before we started recording that you are currently shooting for American Gods right now.
Yeah.
If people want to find you on the interwebs, social, where can people find you?
So on Instagram, Twitter, pretty much everything. I'm at Bruce J Langley. So that would probably be there. If you pop that into any of the big things, that would probably you'll find me. I'll be the smiling blonde British guy going. So
Hey.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, that. So on Instagram, all the rest of that stuff. That's what I'd hunt for.
And when is the next season of American Gods coming out?
That is an interesting question that I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Oh.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed.
Okay. Well, let's not take any risks. And
sure.
Yeah.
Sooner than you might think.
Okay. Well,
that's nice and open. That's nice and open-ended, and won't get me in too much trouble, probably.
That's great. That's a nice open loop. So, I just wanted to, really thank you for, your time today, your openness, your honesty, and there's a reason why my staff, Major, who used to run my clinic, just absolutely adores you. My partner Giovanni adores you. I adore you. I think you're such a special human, and you have a certain colorful way of describing, very serious issues like we've talked about today. But in general, you're just a really stand-up human, and I too am looking forward for you to being the best actor on the planet. So, and watching your star rise. So, thank you for the time you spent with me today.
Don't be silly. No, thanks for chat. It's been really nice. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Stephen Gundry is the video that's coming up next for you. Just click right here. We're talking about the microbiome, energy, postbiotics, mitochondria, and how to get your energy back.
Continuous ketosis, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is really dumb.